My head looks very cut off to me.
You're fine.
Okay. So good morning, good morning. I don't have this thing that flips up that tells me I can't see anything on this computer that tells me that anybody's listening or anybody's there. So Chris, is there anybody there?
We're just going live now, so people should be logging on. Yep, they're starting to log on.
Okay. So good morning, good morning. Good morning, everybody. I have to look at my phone to see what the date is. I know it's it didn't tell me. All right, well, I know it's November. That November's the something.
18th.
It's good morning, everybody. It is November the 18th. It is Thursday morning. The spirit world sees all. Now, from now on forward, when we are doing this show, you might see it as the spirit world sees all, but actually what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a topic. We used to do it this way. um, I don't know why we changed it, but we thought we'd have lots of different topics so that people can sort of join in, get their thoughts together. Before you all come on the show, you can get your thoughts together. We're going to be talking about this or this or this or whatever. We can. That does not mean we need to stick to topic. It does not mean that we can't also talk about other topics. But when we put it up in the future, you will not see the spirit world sees all necessarily. We're not quite sure how we're going to put it yet, but you might see the spirit world talks about, and whatever it is we talk about, who knows how we're going to do it, but we're going to have a topic. Now, last month we had a topic, and that topic was what was it? It was bonfire night, or is that this year? This month? I can't remember. What was the topic? Last month.
So it was October. You did your spooky, chilling.
Oh, that's right. We did Halloween. You see, it all keeps going and going. Anyway, before we carry on, let me say first of all, good morning to my spirit guide, Grey Eagle, who, as always, is standing to my right side. And I would like to say, Chris, good morning to you too. Where are you from? You're in Vermont, I think, at the moment.
I am in Vermont, Rosemary. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Is it breezy? Is it cold? Is it snowing yet? What is it, Chris?
You know that saying about the postman and his delivery, neither rain nor snow nor sleet will
Oh
stop
gosh.
me
Oh
from my
yeah,
appointed
yeah.
rounds. We've had all that.
Oh dear. Oh, has it been miserable or have you been enjoying it?
No, I don't like this really cold, damp kind of weather, so I just stay indoors.
Okay. Well, today, actually, I'd like to tell you that I'm in sunny Florida, but today, just to cheer you all up, all of you who are not somewhere sunny, it's raining a little bit today. The skies are a bit grey, but I do have my doors open and my windows open, and it's nice and warm. Just saying. And I know that there are many of you in other parts of the world. So what we'd like you to do is, can you know to hashtag when you ask a question, you put in a hashtag, right? Can you also tell us where you're from and what the weather might be like just where you are? You can say things like, I'm wearing sandals today. That'll tell us it's warm and sunny. Or you can say, I'm wearing a heavy winter coat. That'll tell us. Or it's freezing. You can say whatever you like, but we'd like to know where you are, what the weather is in your part of the world, because I'm fully aware that even though I am in sunny Florida, even though it's a little cloudy today, I know those clouds are going to shift and I know the sun is going to break through, and I love, love, love it here. But do you like the weather where you are? I mean, let us know, because we want to have all of these wonderful interactions with you. We want to get to know you as much as we can. Right. So now then, we are still in November, and we did celebrate the 11th. We remember and say, when I say celebrate, I'm not sure that celebrate is the right word for it, but we did remember. I certainly did remember my daddy. We certainly remembered the heroes. We had a wonderful evening with people sharing their stories. And if I don't know if Jim is listening or not, but boy, oh boy, I'm still affected by his very wonderful and very inspirational story. So here we are. What are we going to be doing now? Now, Thanksgiving is coming up. Most of the rest of the world do not celebrate Thanksgiving. I know that Canada has Thanksgiving, but it's on a different date. I think they've already had their Thanksgiving, and I know that Thanksgiving is coming up. I think isn't it the last Thursday in the month is always Thanksgiving Day. Would I be right about that, Chris?
Yeah, it's typically.
Okay, um, so being British, when I first came to this country, I heard an awful lot about Thanksgiving. I heard how much fun it was. I heard what people did, all sorts of things. I heard that many people had strangers sitting at their dinner table, or they'd invited friends or whatever. I was expecting, to be honest, I was expecting so much more than I actually got, because although what I got was really lovely, I was able to share someone else's family dinner. I was expecting the hype for Thanksgiving was so high that it kind of fell a little flat for me. And to be honest, I don't now celebrate Thanksgiving, because this is where I'm going to upset all of you a little bit. And I don't mean to upset you all, but if we could go back on the history of Thanksgiving, when the Native American, when the, yes, when the Americas were, let's say, first invaded by, well, actually many different cultures. I think, did the Spanish come in first, and the different people came in? Anyway, um, when people came in, let's say from the Western world, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong about this. They struggled because, just as I struggled, because when I first came to America, I would spend hours in the supermarket just going round and round and round and round, staring hard at things and not knowing what to buy, because everything was labelled differently here in the States than it is in England. And one of the things that I was desperately trying to find was self-raising flour and plain flour. And they here you can actually find self-raising flour, but here they have all-purpose flour and bread flour. It's like, so it's a foreign language really, and they have different products and so on. So here they are back in the 1500s, 1600s or something, and they've landed here. Of course, they don't have supermarkets, do they? They've got to grow their own food. They've got to sort of work the land. They don't know what the land is like. They don't know what the weather is like. They don't know what grows and what doesn't grow. And so the Native Americans, initially, when this country was invaded, I'm going to use that word because it was, the Native Americans were very helpful and showed, let's say, the white people, showed them how to grow their crops, what to do, how to live off the land, so on and so forth. And they were amazing. And had it not been for the Native Americans teaching the whites how to survive in this land, I think either they would have all starved, or probably, got back in the boats and gone off somewhere else. So that's where I think Thanksgiving comes from. I know that any of you out there who thinks I don't know what I'm talking about, and I only do know a little bit. Remember, I'm British, so I only know a little bit of the American history. But I did run it by Chris, so if I've got it wrong, I'm blaming Chris. Right. Anyway, anyway, so this is where the people would sit down and have a big feast when the harvest came in. And of course, all the Native Americans were invited. Everybody was invited to the feast, because it was a feast of Thanksgiving. It was a feast of appreciation. It was a feast that the white people put on for the Native Americans to say thank you for all of the help and so on and so forth. And that was a wonderful thing. However, not so, because then greed set in, didn't it? and then the feeling of supremacy that the whites had, the British, the whoever it is, that we're all responsible for this. The greed, the need for control, the need for power, the ability of the whites to see, the potential, which was more than the Native Americans were happy living the way they lived. The whites being perhaps, let's say, more aware, more educated, and so on, could see greater possibilities. And so that is why they began, little bit by little bit, inch by inch by inch, taking over land that wasn't theirs to take. And this is how the war against the Native Americans began. So greed set in. So there's somewhat a, when we, I'm going to just, for some reason or another, if I lose you, I've just been told I've got a low battery here. I don't quite know why that is. Let me just pull everything else out. Let me just do that. Let's hope that that cures it. Right, so for some reason or another, I'm running out of battery. I'm using a different iPhone. Let's make sure everything is, everything's plugged in. There we go. All right, Chris, am I good? Am I okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
All right, so I think it's fair to say that, greed set in. I think it's fair to say that, the Native Americans had every right to defend their lands. They weren't just defending their lands, they were defending their way of life. I think it's fair to say that a lot of religious, and I'm sure many of them with good intentions, what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, don't you? But, would take the Indian children and try to, cut their hair, put them in suits, try to teach them the ways of the Western world against their will. Let's be clear, against their will. And so, a battle began. The French, the British, the Americans, the settlers here, all went to war against those fabulous Native Americans who initially they were having this great feast for to say thanks to. Now, we all know that history tells us that, we the white races most of us realize what we did and realize that what we did was very wrong. And of course, we now try to make amends, and the Native American communities have rights. Unfortunately, though, many of them were annihilated or destroyed to the point where they've lost all of their lands, so on and so forth. So Thanksgiving for me is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I'm very grateful that people want to celebrate Thanksgiving because they want to acknowledge that there's a lot that they should thank the Native Americans for, aside from anything else, the land that they live on, the place that they build their houses on. So I'm grateful for that, but I do wonder, it's like any war, isn't it? There are casualties, and unfortunately the Native Americans had the biggest and the most casualties. Just a little piece of information which is very interesting, I found very interesting years ago when I learned this. I know that a lot of people still think of, the Native Americans, and here I am being nice about them. And I would even go as far as to say that they are heroes because they fought for their land, they fought for their homes, which is what we all do, which is what the Brits did when Germany tried to invade. And so, that makes them heroes in my book. But there are a lot of people who still considered that the Native Americans were the savages who scalped. Let's not forget the scalpings. Let's not forget, the tomahawks and the scalpings and the so on and so forth. But here is a little piece of history that you might not know about. The Native Americans were not the first to scalp. I do believe that dubious honor goes to the French. Those bloody French, just kidding. We all of us have our, people torture, people do all sorts of things during wars, and even not during wars. that that these things happen. We know that they happen, but I know that there are many people who believe that it was the Native Americans who taught scalping, but actually the Native Americans began scalping when the French began scalping them during the wars, and so I suppose they thought, an eye for an eye. You did it to us, we'll do it to you. And anyway, heroes come in different shapes and sizes. Heroes come in different forms. I think that there are many German soldiers, if we go back to World War One, World War Two, I think there are many German soldiers who were probably phenomenal and beautiful and fabulous heroes. I think there are many housewives. I think there are many of you sitting at home now working and having had to work and to strive and to make sure your family are okay. You are heroes. Heroes come in many shapes, many forms, many nationalities. So even as we are still celebrating our heroes and remembering our heroes for all of this month, I think we should also be thankful and celebrate Thanksgiving as best we can, knowing that I think, I'm sure that the majority of the American people do not like what happened in the past, do not like the fact that people were driven from their homes, were driven to be slaves, were driven to live in a different world and a different culture than they ever should have. Chris, do you have anything to add to that? Did I miss something? Have I misinterpreted something? Have I got something wrong here? Because you know me, I'm always pleased to be educated.
No, I think you've got a good overview of it, Rosemary. I mean, in the United States, it was really Virginia where settlers first landed, and then soon thereafter Massachusetts, which is what people, let's call it our legend. Our legend is the first Thanksgiving is after the Native Americans and the Pilgrims or the settlers in Massachusetts. Um, and it's, you really have to think of it as a legend because do we really think that back then they had turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing and cranberry sauce and all those things that we laden our table traditionally with? I mean, back
Well,
then it was probably freshly killed deer or wild fowl or
Well, wild turkey, yes, I've eaten wild turkey. So
yeah, or
I've actually cooked wild.
cod or bass,
Yeah, yeah.
the corn, the Native American corn, so you know much with anything, stories develop over the years. We make this idealized picture of what it must have been like. I'm sure it wasn't this big friendly across the table everybody having a grand meal together. I'm sure it was like you've said over and over again the years, from your father, keep your, what is it, keep your friends,
Keep your keep your friends close. No, wait a minute. And keep your enemies closer.
yeah.
Always keep your enemies close. Which is my father being, as we all know, a war hero. My father was an army man all of his life, and his strategy was know your enemy. He also had another saying which has really stood me in good stead over the years. He said, before you step onto the battlefield, do one of two things. Make sure that you can win. And if you can't win, make sure that the battle is worth giving your life for. So always pause, take a step back before you step onto any battlefield. And again, I'll tell you what he said. Make sure you can win, or make sure that you're willing to risk your life for a cause or for whatever it is. And I have carried that piece of advice all through my life because, there are times when you can get into a fight, you can get, an upset or an argument or what have you. And it's so easy to let loose if somebody upsets you or you see somebody doing something mean to somebody else. It's so easy to fly off the handle, go into battle, so to speak. But before I go into battle, whether it's an argument with a sales assistant, uh, which maybe happened on one occasion severely, I'll tell you about that story another time, or whether it's arguing an argument with your family, or whether it's an argument with your neighbor, before you do any of that, before you go into battle, take a step back and make sure either you can win the battle, or losing the friendship, not necessarily losing your life, but you losing the friendship, losing the relationship is worth it for the principle. But always take a step back and ask yourself those questions. Is the battle worth it? And that's what my father always said. So keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And before you step onto the battlefield, and this has, again, I'll tell you honestly, even in having to go down to the school to do battle with an occasional school teacher who I felt was not doing a job, or even with if I walk into a shop and someone is outright rude to me, uh, rather than react immediately, and my friends will know this very well, Chris, you'll know this very well, I rarely react. I rarely react. I take my time, I think about it, and I decide, am I going to act, or am I going to let it go? And when I'm asking myself, am I going to act, or am I going to let it go? Really, what I'm asking myself is it worth getting onto the battlefield? Because, as all good soldiers know, and my father being a hero knows, as all good soldiers know, once you step onto the battlefield, you can't run away. I know people do, but I'm not going to. Once I'm stepping onto the battlefield, I'll stay on that battlefield and see the whole thing through. So for me, it's got to be worth it. It's got to be worth my time, my energy. The cause has got to be worth it. The situation has got to be worth it, because battling in any form can be really exhausting. So, um, the interesting thing is that we're coming back to heroes. um, we don't always, our heroes, or when we have had done some heroic act or another, we often actually are not thinking about what we're doing. We're not thinking, is it worth it? It's just something that we do because it's the right thing to do. So, so often heroes are born of those really stupid acts that actually play out. And I think most people who have done heroic deeds will tell you, well, I didn't think about it, just acted. And how stupid was that? Because it could have really gone the other way. But fortunate for them, it didn't. And anyway, Chris, why don't we, if you have anything else to say, I'd be interested. Then why don't we hand it over to everybody else?
Well, the one thing I'd have to say is the settlers came. They were not happy with what was happening in England at the time, right? So they fled to Holland for a bit to get backing so that they could get the ships that they came over with, and then to start life anew here in the States. And we know that people like them, especially the backers and the merchants and stuff, they came over because, hey, they could grow tobacco much cheaper here. And wow, if we can grow lots more tobacco, we're going to need more people to help us. So therefore, we're going to get slaves from Africa and have them come over and do our bidding. So it's like, if things are taken care of at the place they started, two people having a disagreement, settling it there, we talk about the ripple effect, all the ripple effect of all these changes that affect the Native Americans, that have changed the life for our Black communities. Um, we just need to individually handle what crosses our plate in the best way we can so that the ripple effects won't be felt for generations.
But we know, unfortunately, don't we? We could be into this discussion forever. We
Yes.
know their problems. whatever it was I said to this guy. We were talking about different things. Now, he happened to be a little bit deaf. Anyway, off he went, and I didn't hear from him again, which is unusual. I didn't hear from his wife again. And I called and, just, how you doing, whatever going on. And we used to see each other at least once, twice a week. And it was as if they went off the grid. And so every time I called to see what they were doing or how they were, how they were doing, what have you, I got nothing. I either didn't answer the phone or I got the cold shoulder when they did. Now, not talking to me is going to stop me from going to see them. No. So I got in my car and I went over there and I knocked on the door, and they were so shocked because, they didn't expect me to come. I don't know why they didn't expect me to come and face them, really, but because they should have known me better. So I said, right, let's have it. What is going on? And that's what we're talking about, dealing with the situation. And it happened that this guy thought I said whatever it was. I don't. It's so long ago now. I don't remember. Um, and uh, and I corrected him and said, "No, this is what I said." And his wife looked at him and she looked at me, and she knew me very well. She knew that I'm not going to lie about what I said. And then we all realized it was because he was going deaf. He ended up getting, you know, uh, his ears checked out and all the rest of it, and we sorted it out. But he, instead of saying to me, "What did you say? Can you explain that?" when it was happening, got all offended and upset. And how could she say that to me? And how could she think that to me? And went off in a huff, completely with the wrong end of things. Do you know how many people are fighting still after years and years? How many family feuds there are? How many people who don't get invited to a wedding because somebody thought they said something that they probably didn't say, or said something that they didn't mean? I mean, you know, this is how wars start. This is how, the world is in this awful state of, he said, she said, and politicians are fighting and people get mean to each other and so on. And we can't change that. We can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. So I think at this Thanksgiving, which is next week, but it it only reminds us of what we should be doing every day of every week of every year of our lives. I think always trying to give the benefit of the doubt. Did they mean to hurt me when they said that? And face it and go to somebody and say, "Excuse me, but can you talk to me?" My students, I have to tell you, dread when I say to them, "I need to talk to you." I don't know why they dread it, but they do. But when I say to my students or even to my friends, "We need to have a talk," everybody gets, you know, knees knocking and get a bit nervous, right, Chris? Because they wonder,
That would never happen to me.
oh, yeah, yeah, well, we know that's not true. But I mean, it's much better to sort of sit somebody down in a good way, in a nice way, and say, um, you know, that so and so, or when you did such and such, I just want you to know that it hurt me. And give that person a chance to say, "Well, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it," or
All right, folks, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties on Rosemary's end with her internet. So we're going to give her a minute to try to log back in. Maybe it had to do with her battery issue on her phone. So I'm reading here in the chat room folks who had answered Rosemary's questions early on about where they're from, and what they thought their weather was like and whether they loved it or not. So, Mark, I see in Tulsa, you get all 4 seasons, and some of those are wind storms too. Boy, we had the wind blowing here last night, that's for sure. Cheryl is in sunny Charleston, South Carolina, 71 degrees. Boy, do I envy that right now. Jeannie's from Maine, and it's gray and wet and chilly. And Jeannie, I think I have the exact same weather you have here in Vermont. Tracy's saying it's cold and damp in Yorkshire. Let's see who else here. Carol is in Texas, and Carol, I'm seeing you've had some surgery, maybe overnight, so we're going to make sure your name gets on our healing list. Sending you all our best. D has it 62 degrees and sunny in New York City. Well, D, you got it a little bit warmer, so we're envious of that. Hi, Bridget. Bridget was one of our bottom brickers. It's nice to see you here. Maria looks like from Italy as well as Daniela, so it's great to see you here. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll over the chat room just a little bit to try to save the questions for when Rosemary comes back on. I certainly hope she's going to come back on. And let's see, Janina, we don't know where you're from. Maybe you could let us know in the chat room. Same for Arit. I'm reading Grazi, so I'm assuming that's going to be Italy. And then, see what else here. Terry's on from Maine. And then Eric is on from California. So let's put me on pause here for a second. And because I think Rosemary.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm going to take myself off of unmute and try to get you right back in here, Rosemary.
Works for me.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Okay.
So, Rosemary, while you were out, we went over where everybody was from and the weather that they had, and we're saving the questions for when you're popping in. back in.
That's okay. I'll go through that later because I missed that and I really wanted to know that. Anyway, so, all right. Well, I have no idea what happened because everything's plugged in. It said my iPad was low battery, which it should not have been at all. Don't ask me. I'm no good at this stuff. Anyway, here we are, Chris. What have we got?
All right, so let's start with some comments. Carolyn is saying or asking, didn't the Native Americans love, honor, and respect our planet Earth?
Oh no, not again. I'm getting that notification again. Hold on. Let's close that out. It says low battery again, and yet it's plugged into the electric. So, gosh, let's hope I don't have to get yet another iPad. Right. They did. Oh gosh, they did absolutely, and I think still do. Everything was about the earth. Everything was about nature. Everything was sort of just, naturally beautiful. I mean, think about what we actually did. What the uh, the Western world, let's call it. Think about what we did. We brought in guns. We brought in drink. We brought in alcohol. We brought in um, drugs. One of the biggest things that we brought in was which went a long way to annihilating many of the Native American peoples, was we brought in disease. You know, so while they were giving us gifts and teaching us how to use the land, we were giving them gifts of, guns, war, greed, drugs, and pestilence. Anyway, carry on, Chris.
Okay,
And by the way, I just want to remind everyone that Grey Eagle is standing right by my side with no animosity whatsoever for any of this, just so you all know. And I know that he has suggested that next Thursday, even though we will not be having our Thursday show next Thursday because Thursday is Thanksgiving Day, we will be recording a message. Grey Eagle will be recording a message. I'm not sure what the message is going to say. I do hope it's going to be a nice one. I think it will be. He's laughing at me. Which we will put out next Thursday morning. So if you want to hear what Grey Eagle has to say to all of you, that will be, it's a bit like the Queen's speech, isn't it? 4 o'clock on Christmas Day, there's the Queen's speech and everybody gathers around to hear the Queen's speech. Anyway, if you gather around whatever time it is that we put our Grey Eagle speech out there for all of you, we shall be recording that and we shall put it out on at 11 o'clock, I think, as our usual time. Chris.
okay. Cheryl's saying, I was around Iroquois people for years when selling with my boyfriend at powwows. They live in two worlds, their ancestry and the modern world. They celebrate just to give thanks.
Yeah. Yes, I think we can learn so very much from the Native American communities, their culture, their you know unfortunately, so many suffer with drug and alcohol abuse, and unfortunately, a lot of them struggle with that to this day. And it's a terrible, terrible thing that they have to deal with, that their communities have to deal with. Um, so they're maybe not nearly as thankful for us as we are for them.
All right. Bridget, who is one of our bottom brickers,
Hi,
said
Bridget.
said I just found out that my ancestors came to Plymouth, Massachusetts,
I've lost you,
from
Chris.
what's that?
Just lost you.
They-
I heard you say I just find out that.
My ancestors came to Plymouth, Massachusetts from merry old England, and guess what? I was born in the same town my ancestors lived in over 200 years ago, which
Wow.
was New London, Connecticut.
All right.
My ancestors had migrated across this country, but because my dad was in the Navy, I came into the world in that very same spot despite no family residing there.
Wow. How interesting is that? Thanks for sharing that with us.
Cheryl's saying here in South Carolina, a settlement was established in 1670. They thought the weather was warm year round, so many crops died when the weather got colder. Again, native people helped them.
Yeah. Great.
Sandra's commenting on your earlier comments, saying sometimes the battle is so stressful that it's just not worth it for sure.
Well, I think that again, Sandra, I'm going to remind you of what I said, what my father used to say. Before you step onto the battlefield, make sure number one, you can win it, or number two, it's worth the fight. And I think, that's those are the two important things to say. I know that there are occasions when you can find yourself on a battlefield that you didn't expect to be on, and you certainly wasn't your decision to get on there. But it is your decision once you're on there to do whatever it is that you can, whether to step off the battlefield, whether to sit in a corner and let everybody else battle. We always have choices, even though those choices might be very, very limited. Even if we don't have any physical choice, we certainly have choices over our attitude. And, I've heard many, many prisoners say this, you can wreck my body, you can destroy my body, you can torture my body, but my mind is my own. And, that's where, you know, nobody can, nobody can abuse your mind unless you allow it. So just remember, many, many prisoners survived absolute hellholes, being tortured, being put in cells for days on end by themselves, solitary for years on end, actually. But their mind went to places where they were safe, where they could be happy. And nobody can get to your mind unless you allow it. Easy to say, and not so easy to do, but it is true. Chris.
Betta's asking, my son Simone has a dream to establish himself as a DJ. On December 7th, he will perform with his friend in a nightclub. Will it continue his path in the future? And thank
Well,
you for your answer.
I bet it depends on how he wants it to. We just talked about attitude, so it's his choice, isn't it? Chris.
Sheila's asking, do you have any advice for her love life and interest for right now and maybe the future?
I have a ton of advice for you, but unfortunately, this show is only an hour long and we've only got 10 minutes left of it. So that ton of advice, I'm afraid, is going to be, I'm going to suggest, my darling, that if you do want something like that, you need to have a life consultation, a life as in LIFE, not live, LIVE, a consultation. And you can find out more about that by emailing Chris, KRIS, at rosemaryaltea.com. Chris.
Violet's saying if this is an odd question, but she's wondering about Thanksgiving and turkey. Did Gray Eagle have a favorite food?
Oh, Violet, I love that question. And uh, good morning to you. Um, he's whispering in my ear, really, really in my ear, fish, fish, and more fish. There you are. There you have it. I didn't know that. See, I never ever thought to ask him that. But fish, fish, and more fish. Yeah, there you are then. Okay. And I'm
Mark's
wondering now, and I've got to ask him this. I'll ask him this after the show. But knowing where lived, he lived in Arizona. He lived in the Superstition Mountains. So I'm thinking, were there fish there? Or maybe that wasn't his favourite food then, but maybe it is now. We are having fish for dinner tonight, so I'm wondering what he means by that. You see, there are no simple questions and there are definitely no simple answers. Chris, keep going.
That might have to be the next thing on your cooking show. Some
What?
kind of fish, whatever Grey Eagle says his favorite fish is.
Well, I'm making cod with parmesan. Baking cod with parmesan, and it's my favourite dish. It's my favourite way to eat cod, that's for sure. And but it's very rich. You know the one, Chris. You've had it,
Oh, that's one of my favorites that you
right?
make, yes.
Yeah, mayonnaise and
Oh, and the
uh,
flakes of the cod just fall
grated
apart. They're so
grated Parmesan
delicious.
cheese and a little uh, hot sauce and some scallions or spring onions, as we know, finely sliced. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, that's tonight's dinner. So I have a friend over for dinner, so that's what I'm making tonight. Carry on.
All
So
right. Mark is
see how easily distracted I am into cooking. Violet, you did that, and if you want that recipe, well, I'm very happy to give it to you because it is. Doesn't the cod just disintegrate and just big large flakes of this delicious fish? Isn't anyway? Yeah.
Yeah,
Move on,
I'll
Chris.
put your cookbook link up in here in just a second after I read this
Okay.
question or read this comment from Mark. You said what I was thinking about what the white people brought to the natives' land. I actually apologized to our American Indians on Thanksgiving. We took away from them. We gave them viruses, plagues, disease, etc.
But guess what? The majority, well, all of those who are still here with us, they survived. We survive. And, I find it very interesting. I'm going to throw this into the mix. I know that we're due to sort of come up to time here, but I'm going to throw this in the mix and maybe we'll have a conversation about this another time. I remember going into the Native American community, and I was asked to go and speak purely to the Native American and this Native American group, and I was invited to go to their lodge, which was a huge honor. And when you look at the Native American culture, you can tell exactly who they are. When you look at lots of different cultures, we don't have time to name them all, but you can tell who they are. And although we talk about the annihilation of the Native Americans, they did survive and they are thriving, and you can tell immediately when you look at one, they have their very distinctive features. Unfortunately, when you look at my country, where we use the term Great Britain, and we were a very great nation of British people for centuries. But if you go back to the true Britain, as you can go back to the true native native cultures, the Aborigines for one, and the Native Americans, and so on. We can name a few. But when you go back to the original cultures, you can look at them and you can see they still are very distinctive, and you can tell who they are and what they are, and they retain that incredible beauty of their own individual culture. When you look at people in Britain, it's very doubtful. In fact, I would say it's not possible to find a true Britain, because I don't think there are any left, because we were invaded by the Romans, the Vikings, the, or you name it, the Norse people. We were invaded so many times by so many different races. We were, not we meaning me personally, we were raped, we were pillaged, we were this and that, and so on and so forth, until the majority of people in our country, instead of having whatever it is, brown eyes or blue eyes or whatever, who knows what the true Britain looks like anymore? Who knows what the eye color was? Who knows what the hair color was? Because we were, in fact, as Britons, we were just sort of annihilated. There is no such thing as a pure Briton. There is no such thing. I mean, if there is, I'd like to meet that person. But it's very doubtful because we were invaded, we were raided, we were, we were raped, pillaged, and all of that stuff to the point where, our race, the British race, our true Briton, did not survive. We are a mix of, you name it, of various different nationalities. And so when I look at the Native American people, it's really admirable to me that they totally retain who they are as individuals and who they are, and they retain what it is that they are as well, and again many other nationalities. And not that the Britons didn't fight, because we did. We fought for our lands and so on. But we were a small country and we were invaded over the centuries so many different times. And so many other nationalities invaded our space. And we became this, talk about the melting pot. People think of America as the melting pot, but actually, if you look at Britain, if you look at our British way of life, our nationality, and I'm a very proud Scot and Welsh person. I'm very proud of my culture. I'm very proud of my British heritage, but I also know very much so that, I'm not necessarily a purebred, even though I am proud of who I am, and I'm proud of the, when I hear bagpipes, for instance, I just disintegrate. Anyway, Chris, moving on.
All right, Bridget is saying someone in spirit is rumbling around in the kitchen,
Oh,
making my coffee machine beep and
oh,
knocking stuff off the counter, teasing my dogs. Can you tell me who is visiting me?
I can't, but it looks like you need to have a conversation with them once you're done watching this show. Chris.
Starlight is saying, I have had a heartbreaking event happen last year. Do you see it changing next month?
I usually would not answer this, but Gregor has his hand on my shoulder, so you obviously need something. I think it's going to take a little longer for it to get better, for it to change, because I do feel it will get better, but maybe the beginnings of getting better, of it improving, will be next month. But I think it's going to take longer than you anticipated, but please hold up your chin, have faith. It will get better eventually. Chris.
We have a number of people in our chat room writing to us in Italian, unfortunately, not in English, so we can't answer them here.
Okay, you need to use Google Translate. So we love to hear from you. We love to hear from the Italian people. We love to hear from every nationality, but we don't speak many languages. English, please, English only. And use Google Translate. That's all we can do, Chris.
Yes. So Rosemary, we're just, a couple minutes shy of the hour. I'm wondering if you can take a minute to talk about your upcoming event.
Yes, on December the 11th, is it, Chris?
Yes.
We are having an event. We are very excited about this. If you want tickets, or you want to know more about it, or if you want to join with us, we'll be spending 3 hours talking to the dead, who we know are not dead at all, don't we? We're going to be spending 3 hours. Grey Eagle and I are going to be giving messages, so please join. I don't like calling it a webinar, because I think it might give the impression that it's, something that it isn't. It's just a group of people. You join, you buy tickets, you join, you stay with me, you're with me, and you're with Grey Eagle, and we are going to be taking questions from each of you. And, when those questions come into us, we hopefully are going to be giving messages. We're going to be connecting with the spirit world, and we're going to give messages. Now, we've done this twice before and it's worked brilliantly, 2 or 3 times before now, I'm not sure. It's worked brilliantly and we're expecting it to work again brilliantly. So please join us December the 11th. If you want to know more about that, please go to the website, rosemaryaltea.com. You'll be able to click and find tickets right there. It'll take you to a place where you click on it and get tickets there. Or if you want to know more, or you're not sure what it's about and so on, then email us, Chris, Kris, at rosemaryaltea.com.
I think the last thing we want to mention to people is we're hoping to give a small little gift to anyone who has subscribed to your newsletter. Do you
Yeah.
want to talk about that?
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, what I would like to say is in this day and age of social media, we are not in control of who has access to any of Rosemary's social media, and she can be taken down at just the snap of a finger and a whim. The one thing we can control is our mailing list. So if you want that comfort in knowing that you'll always be connected to Rosemary, I would go to Rosemary's website and subscribe so that once a month you can receive a newsletter and know what's happening.
Yeah, so subscribe, and share. Yes, we like our subscribers. We recently were hacked into with our Instagram. We had thousands of followers and now we don't because somebody decided to hack into it and I was getting weird emails and so on. We can't rectify it. We can't get those people back. We can only hope that people go to our Instagram page, which is now a new Instagram, and join Instagram and follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter and Facebook and all of those things. So please, feel free to do all of that, my darlings, and share. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to say a special thank you to Chris, because I know that she's, sort of juggling a trillion balls, got a trillion balls in the air. And I know that, this coming weekend, I think at some point anyway, I know, Chris, you're traveling to family for Thanksgiving. So oh, wait a minute. I will see you before then because we've got story time on Saturday. I almost forgot. So I was going to, for all of you who don't or can't, for whatever reason, join us for story time, which is on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then we shall, I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving for next weekend. And for those of you I'll see, hey, we're going to have another neat story. So I'm looking forward to that. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Please, please, please subscribe. Use hashtag Rosemary Altea whenever you can. And what else? And oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I'll see you. Hopefully, I'll see you on Saturday. And we'll be doing some little off the cuffs here and there too. So watch for those as well. In the meantime, thank you all for watching. And please have a very, very blessed rest of the day, everybody. Bye-bye.